The tension wasn't in the air. It was in the silence between words, in the way Denzel Washington leaned back in his seat, composed, still, unreadable, and in the way the host leaned forward, too casual, too eager, too ready to ignite something he didn't fully understand. The host smirked as he shuffled the blue cards on his lap. "So, Denzel," he began, "you've had quite the career. Oscars, blockbusters, critical acclaim, but some folks think you've played it safe." Denzel didn't move, just blinked slowly. "Safe?" he echoed, voice velvet smooth. "You'll have to explain that one." "Well," the host chuckled, "you know, some actors take big swings, controversial roles, political statements. You've always stayed polished, strategic, almost," he paused, grinning, "controlled. Controlled." That word lingered in the air like smoke. The audience murmured, unsure if it was a compliment or a trap. Denzel folded his hands on the table. "Interesting," he said. "So, you're saying dignity looks like caution?" The host shrugged, smirking. "I'm just saying, in today's world, speaking up matters. You've stayed on the fence about a lot. Police brutality, Hollywood racism, politics. A lot of people wonder, why stay quiet?" Denzel's gaze darkened. He didn't blink. "I don't perform for hashtags," he said quietly. "I don't trade convictions for applause." The room stiffened. The host leaned in further. "But don't you think that's a luxury? Staying silent while others risk everything? Don't you owe it to your community to take a side?" Denzel sat perfectly still, and then he spoke. "I owe my community truth, not theatrics, not noise, and certainly not sitting in a velvet chair on a TV set, letting someone like you define what courage looks like." The host's smile faltered. Audience, stunned, silent. But he tried again. "Come on, Denzel. You've said it yourself. You play characters who stand for something. You played Malcolm X. But Denzel Washington, the man, he rarely speaks out. That's confusing for a lot of people. Is that guilt?" The air snapped. Denzel's head tilted slightly. "Guilt?" he repeated. "You're asking a black man if he feels guilty for not putting his pain on display for your approval?" The host blinked, and that's when Denzel leaned forward. Slow, measured. "You see, this is the game," he said, voice calm but cold. "You invite me here to talk about my craft, my legacy, and then you bait me. Push me to bleed on command for a headline. I'm just asking questions," the host said almost defensively. "No," Denzel said, eyes narrowing. "You're packaging disrespect as curiosity, and you're hoping I'll explode so you can go viral." The audience erupted in applause, but Denzel didn't smile. He was still locked in. "You want a soundbite?" he continued. "Here's one. Black men don't owe you their rage. We don't have to put our trauma on a platter just to prove we care." The host raised a hand, trying to take back control. "I'm not trying to provoke you, Denzel. I respect you." "No, you don't," Denzel said. Quiet, sharp, undeniable. "If you respected me," he continued, "you wouldn't be fishing for the one moment you can cut into a 20-second clip and spin it like I lost control. I'm not here to break. I'm here to build. Something you clearly don't understand." Another ripple through the audience. The host sat back, his fake smile gone now. He was exposed. Denzel sat in silence for a long moment, and then calmly he turned to the audience. "I was told we'd be discussing film, legacy, article, not my silence, not my rage, and not my guilt. So if that's the interview, I'm ready." A beat, and the host, cornered, sputtered, "We'll be right back after the break." But Denzel never looked away, and neither did the audience, because something was cracking beneath the surface, and everyone could feel it coming. The moment they returned from commercial break, the temperature on set was no longer mild. It was radioactive. The audience had sensed it. Something shifted. No laughter, no applause. Just that heavy, unnatural stillness, like the seconds before a thunderclap. Denzel hadn't moved during the break. He sat calmly, hands folded, but his silence was no longer gentle. It had weight. The host returned to his seat a beat too fast, nervous. He tried to smile, but the corners of his mouth twitched. He shuffled his cue cards, avoided eye contact, then cleared his throat. "All right," he said, voice falsely light. We're back with the legendary Denzel Washington. And hey, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Let's pivot to something fun. Your new film. Denzel didn't respond. Just watched him, quiet, as if waiting to see who this man was going to become next. The host squirmed. Unless, he said quickly, you'd prefer to keep the conversation real. Denzel finally blinked. Let's keep it honest, he said evenly. That's what you really want, right? The host smiled nervously. Denzel leaned in. You invited me here under the guise of respect, but now you're trying to craft a narrative, the unspoken one, that I'm difficult, aloof, afraid to speak up. And if I push back, then I'm angry, aggressive, the scary one. The host interjected too fast. No, come on now. I'm not saying that. I'm just... Then what are you saying? Denzel asked, voice quiet, but it struck like thunder. The host froze. You brought up race. You brought up Malcolm. You brought up silence, all laced with implication. But you don't want the real talk. You want a viral soundbite to boost your ratings. You want Denzel the brand, not Denzel the man. There was no audience. Applause this time. Just an eerie stillness. Because everyone knew this was no longer an interview. This was a reckoning. The host laughed awkwardly, desperate to shift tone. Okay, all right, Denzel, I hear you. Let's talk legacy. Since we're being real, some people say you played roles that made white audiences comfortable, that you didn't challenge the system enough. What would you say to those critics? And just like that, he crossed the line. The audience gasped, audible. A few in the front row shifted uncomfortably. Denzel's eyes narrowed. That's bold, he said slowly, especially coming from someone who's never lived a day in my skin. The host blinked. It's not my opinion? No, Denzel cut him off. It's worse. You're quoting someone else so you can hide behind it. The host opened his mouth, but no words came. Denzel didn't flinch. Let me explain something to you, he said, voice tightening. There is nothing comfortable about rising in a system that wasn't built for you. There is nothing safe about playing complex black men in a world that reduces us to caricatures. And there is nothing strategic about survival. It's just survival. The host glanced nervously at the producers off stage, but no help was coming. Denzel's voice deepened. You want to talk about comfort? I turned down films that paid 10 times more because they insulted my intelligence. I fought for roles where the black man wasn't just a victim, a thug, or a token. He leaned in further. You think playing safe is choosing dignity over spectacle? You think legacy is about shouting into microphones or tweeting outrage on demand? The host raised a hand as if to slow him, but Denzel wasn't slowing. Legacy, he said, is built in silence, in consistency, in how you carry yourself when nobody's watching, in what you teach your sons when the cameras are off. The audience stirred, because this wasn't just an actor talking anymore. This was something else, bigger, deeper, righteous. The host tried again, visibly flustered. But don't you think, Denzel, that right now in this era, silence can look like complicity? Denzel's expression hardened. I'm not silent, he said quietly. I'm selective. Another pause. Then he spoke again, this time lower, slower. You want me to shout so you can say I snapped. You want me to weep so you can say I'm broken. You want me to scream so you can turn me into the angry black man trope. But here's the problem. He paused. I'm not playing your character, the audience murmured, then erupted in applause. Denzel remained still, but the fire behind his eyes was unmistakable now. The host leaned back, finally quiet, and that's when Denzel said it. You're not here to hear me. You're here to perform my breakdown. You're hoping I'll make your job easy. He, the Shurinan, stood, not suddenly, not for drama. He just rose, with purpose. The host's eyes widened. Wait, where are you going? Denzel looked down at him. I came here as a guest, he said, not a prop. The crowd was stunned. Denzel, don't... Come on, let's finish the interview. We already did, Denzel replied. You just didn't listen. He took off his mic, laid it gently on the table, then looked into the crowd. I don't owe you a spectacle, he said, but I do owe myself peace. And then he turned, and walked off stage. He was gone, just like that. Denzel Washington, arguably the most respected man in Hollywood, had walked out of the studio. No tantrum, no meltdown, just calm, lethal clarity. The host sat frozen in his chair, still holding the cue cards, still staring at the empty spot where Denzel had sat moments ago. Silence stretched, too long, the kind that starts to feel like punishment. A whisper ran through the audience, first row to back, side to side, and then silence again. No one clapped, no one laughed. They weren't watching a show anymore. They were witnessing something they couldn't explain, and the cameras were still rolling. The host blinked like he'd just been hit, then forced a shaky smile. "Well, that was unexpected," he muttered into the mic. He looked off stage, eyes darting toward the producers, the crew, anyone who could rescue him from the moment. No one moved. In the control room, nobody knew whether to cut the feed or let it play. But by now, tens of thousands were watching live, on YouTube, on the stream, on satellite. And then the comments started. Did Denzel just walk out? This host is done. Never seen him like that. Respecting he tried to bait a legend and got humbled. Trending within minutes. Joshua Denzel walks. Joshua respect Denzel. Joshua dignity over drama. The host finally looked back into the camera. The false charm gone. "I think what we just witnessed," he began, trying to recalibrate, "was an emotional moment. And I want to be clear. I have deep respect for Mr. Washington. Always have." His voice cracked on the last word. Audience still didn't clap, because they'd seen through it. They saw how he pushed. They saw how he poked and prodded and smiled through it. And they saw Denzel rise without theatrics, without shouting, without asking for applause, just walked away. And now the host sat there, exposed. He shifted in his seat, desperate to reframe the story. "Listen, I ask tough questions," he continued. "That's what I'm here to do. I ask the questions people at home are afraid to ask. That's why this show matters. That's why people tune in." It sounded desperate now. The crowd wasn't buying it. And then someone shouted from the back row, "Denzel just taught you what a real man looks like." Scattered applause broke out. Unplanned, raw. The host stiffened, embarrassment in his throat. I don't think I disrespected him," he mumbled. "I was trying to have a conversation." But the narrative had already slipped from his hands. It was in the audience now, in the trending hashtags, in the reaction videos already uploading in real time. Denzel Washington shuts down talk show, host live. Masterclass in composure by Denzel. This is how you walk away, with power. Backstage, producers scrambled, phones ringing, emails blowing up, sponsors asking questions. And Denzel? He was already gone. Into the black SUV, into the quiet. No PR statement, no press conference. Because when you speak truth that loud, you don't need to explain yourself. Back on set, the host exhaled into the silence. And then he did the one thing he hadn't done the entire interview. He looked shaken. Not because he'd been yelled at, not because he'd been insulted, but because the world was finally seeing him. Not as the clever, edgy interviewer, but as the man who tried to bait greatness into breaking and failed, miserably. He leaned into the mic one last time. "I guess we'll take another break." But this time, no one applauded, no one waited, because the moment had passed, and Denzel had taken the dignity with him. He didn't slam a door, didn't shout in the hallway, didn't even look back. Denzel Washington left that set the way he arrived, composed, focused, still. But the aftershocks, they were anything but calm. By the time his car had turned the corner from the studio lot, Twitter was in flames. Clips of the confrontation had gone viral. Not overproduced clips, raw audience cell phone videos, angled, shaky, real, and that made them unstoppable. TikTok, watch how Denzel silences the room without even raising his voice. Master. YouTube, talk show host pushes too far, gets obliterated by Denzel Washington. Twitter/X, hashtag Denzel speaks, hashtag silence eyes power, hashtag Denzel was right. Every major outlet picked it up within the hour. CNN, BBC, TMZ, VARAEETY, even the New York Times. Denzel's departure, a cultural reset on Live TV. Washington refuses to be a pawn in a media circus. Powerful, poised, and unbothered, Denzel's walkout becomes a symbol. But Denzel, silent. He didn't post a statement, didn't run to Instagram, didn't issue a clapback, because silence in that moment said more than 1,000 press releases. Back in the studio, the host was unraveling. He tried to recover the show, brought on the next guest, changed topics, forced smiles. But the audience wasn't with him anymore. They weren't laughing, they weren't clapping, they weren't forgetting. And then it got worse. A producer leaned in from off stage, whispering into his ear during a segment. He flinched, then turned pale. Sponsors were pulling out. 3 of them, gone within 40 minutes. Another leaned on the network to issue an apology fast. The host tried damage control, went live on Instagram later that night. Guys, I just want to clear the air. I've always respected Denzel. The conversation got intense, sure, but I never meant to cross a line. But the comments section destroyed him. Respect isn't baiting someone on live TV. You got caught trying to make a moment, and he made a statement. You didn't interview him, you ambushed him, and then came the statement. Not from Denzel, but from someone unexpected. Mahershala Ali on Twitter. Denzel taught a masterclass in grace under fire tonight. No gimmicks, just truth. Salute Lupita Nyong'o. There's power in knowing when to walk away. There's peace in not performing for the sake of it. Where Denzel was right. Samuel L. Jackson. I wish a host would try that mess with me. Denzel kept it cool. Too cool. By sunrise, the narrative was cemented. The host became a meme. The moment became a movement. And Denzel? He didn't need to explain. But the world did hear from him. One final time. 3 days later, at a charity event for inner-city youth, a reporter asked him offhand as he entered the venue, "Mr. Washington, any comment on what happened during that interview?" He paused, smiled slightly, then said, "I just decided not to dance for anyone else's show. That's all," and walked on. No drama, just legacy. Back in the studio, the host sat in his next taping. Same chair, same studio. But something was broken now. He knew it. He looked into the camera, and for the first time he looked small. He had chased a headline and lost the room. Because some men don't come to entertain, they come to elevate. And if you try to twist them into spectacle, they'll walk, not to escape, but to teach. If you watch this entire showdown, you saw it with your own eyes. A man refusing to play along, a truth cutting through showbiz noise, a host exposed, a legend redefined. And if you ever doubted that quiet could be louder than shouting, now you know. Denzel didn't just walk off that stage. He walked into history, respect, dignity, power. If you felt what Denzel did, hit like and let the world know. Silence can speak louder than chaos.